So the next day rolls in with absurdly perfect weather, the kind of sunshine that makes you feel like the world itself is rooting for you. The fields around the Demon King's castle are completely transformed. Ball casually pulls a corn out of the ground and just stares at it, half curious, half impressed, like he's discovered a rare artifact instead of food. Flute, meanwhile, is having the best day of her life. She yanks out a pumpkin bigger than her own head, hops around with it, and proudly announces to the entire demon race that yes, it is huge. Sergei's arms are full of beans and she's already doing long-term planning, like, wow, this could last us years. ARA'S is just standing there with a corn in hand, staring at it intensely, probably trying to decide whether to roast it, fight it, or both. And then there's Kim. From the outside, he looks terrifying as usual, stone-cold face, sharp eyes, full Demon King aura. If a random human walked by, they'd think he was ordering an execution. Instead, he's yelling, it's harvest time, cut everything down. The demons respond with frightening enthusiasm, bloodthirsty smiles, intense expressions, wild energy. Anyone watching from afar would assume a massacre is happening. In reality, it's just very aggressive farming. No violence, just crops getting absolutely demolished out of excitement, while the field explodes into chaos, happy chaos. Kim quietly turns away. No speech, no drama. He just walks off, leaving the celebration behind. Artanis notices, but she doesn't say anything yet. Back in the field, Flute's dad is basically vibrating with excitement, rushing up to Hartok to announce they've hit jackpot-level yields. Hartok, being Hartok, shuts that down instantly with a serious face. This isn't the finish line. This is barely the start. The focus shifts to Kim, now walking alone toward a swampy area. His mood is completely different here, calm, calculating. He's already moved past celebration mode. He's thinking about the problem. Yes, the crops grew. But corn, pumpkins, beans, all of them are sterile. No seeds, no future harvest from this land. That means farming near the Demon King's castle won't last. If they want stability, they'll need to develop the swamp instead. He looks over the poisonous water and imagines rice fields spreading across it, golden, endless, feeding everyone. Then reality kicks in. Poison land. Rice won't grow. They need clean water, reliable seeds, and a massive project to make it work. Which leads to the obvious, slightly annoying conclusion, they need humans. Right on cue, the system pops up and basically reminds him, hey, you're talking like a full-time demon. You know you were human once, right? Kim pauses, not shocked, more like, mildly inconvenienced by the reminder. He scratches his chin and realizes he hasn't even thought about being transmigrated lately. Somewhere along the way, acting Demon King turned into being Demon King. After a moment, he smirks. Does it really matter? He straightens up, confidence fully back online. If he has to be ruthless, so be it. If he has to plan like a tyrant, fine. He's the Demon King now, one who has an entire race to feed. Cut back to the field. Corn is roasting over a fire. The mood is pure celebration. ARA'S lifts a roasted cob like it's a trophy and shouts praise. Cheers erupt. Then, in classic ARA'S fashion, he turns toward Richmond, looking like he's about to end a life. Hey, human! Richmond panics instantly. Yes, what did I do? I'm sorry in advance. ARA'S shoves the corn toward him and growls, enjoy your meal. Richmond takes it, completely confused. Internally, he admits it again, terrifying on the outside, weirdly gentle on the inside. He'll probably never get used to that contrast, but at least the food is good. So while the rest of the demons are fully committed to eating like tomorrow doesn't exist, Zephyros walks into the hut and asks Kim if he's not going to join in. Kim brushes it off casually. He already ate, they should enjoy themselves. Very Demon King answer, very suspicious behavior. Zephyros doesn't say anything, but he can tell something's off. Kim's sitting there with his hand on his chin, clearly stuck inside his own head. T-Bone even perches on his shoulder, quietly worried, like a tiny emotional support dragon. Around them, the contrast is ridiculous. The tiny demon happily crunching beans, Nox tearing into pumpkin, Turtle calmly chewing beans, the tree demon gnawing pumpkins like it's the best day of his life. Everyone looks content, like real, peaceful content. And the system is absolutely loving it. HP notifications start popping up non-stop. 6,782, then 8,315. Then 10,359. Then suddenly 13,612. The more everyone eats and laughs, the stronger Kim gets. It's almost like joy itself is healing him. Flute is so full she looks like a walking rice bale, and her dad is still eating pumpkin like it's his personal mission. From behind, Artanis notices Zephyros writing things down and asks if he's recording everything. He confirms it calmly. She quietly thinks that even if everyone's harsh with her sometimes, this side of the demon race isn't cruel at all. Then she asks the real question, whether Kratos is still troubled. Zephyros dodges it smoothly by asking if she's done harvesting Area 7. She freezes. Clearly not. So she storms off and starts cutting crops with way more aggression than necessary, either working hard or venting frustration, possibly both. When she finally finishes and calls Zephyros again, exhausted, he answers properly this time. Yes, Kratos is struggling. Everyone wants him to relax and celebrate with them, but he keeps staying alone. Artanis immediately understands, Kim doesn't know how to rest. He's not used to enjoying things without planning 10 steps ahead. Zephyros goes quiet, realizing he never thought of it that way. Meanwhile, Kim's still sitting there rubbing his head, thinking, the plans are all in place, but doubt creeps in anyway. Will it really work? T-Bone just stares at him, worried. That's when Zephyros suddenly bursts in, yelling his name like the world is ending. Kim jumps so hard it's like someone erased his mental save file mid-thought. Zephyros panics and tells him there's a problem in the field. Kim's expression flips instantly. No hesitation, he runs. They sprint up the hill, gasping for air, and when Kim finally looks down, he freezes. In the middle of the field, written carefully among the vegetables, are the words, "For feeding us, thank you." Kim just stares. Everyone's standing there, smiling, not excited, not loud, just genuinely grateful, respectful, warm, the kind of look that hits harder than any praise. His eyes sting. He aggressively rubs them and yells about dust getting everywhere and wasted labor, doing his absolute best to pretend this isn't emotional damage. Zephyros calmly apologizes for lying and admits he knew Kim wouldn't come unless forced. Artanis quietly backs him up. Rest alone doesn't give strength. Sometimes you need to be reminded why you're standing in the first place. It doesn't take much. Just sincere words. Kim scans the field instinctively, looking for Artanis, and spots her working like nothing happened. He stays quiet for a moment, then suddenly shouts so loud the entire area shakes. He declares that from now on, every year on this day, they'll celebrate the harvest properly, eating, playing, and enjoying everything to their heart's content. He names it outright. Mid-Autumn Harvest. The demons explode with joy, cheers everywhere, pure chaos. Zephyros asks softly if they'll be able to celebrate it again next year. Kim answers without hesitation, of course. Then that familiar sharp grin appears, the one that means trouble for someone else. Tomorrow, he's heading to the human kingdom, to establish diplomatic relations.
Like, share.
So everyone piles into the hut, still riding the post-harvest energy. Zephyros hears this and immediately feels like he should say, "Are you insane?" but very politely restrains himself. Kim, of course, calls him out for it anyway, because apparently Zephyros has said that exact thing to him many times before. Zephyros denies it with the calm confidence of someone who absolutely said it. Once the panic settles, Zephyros remembers the practical side and points out that Kim already mentioned this before, humans are the most reliable source of seeds. Kim agrees happily. From his perspective, diplomacy isn't idealism, it's just the least bloody way to get farming supplies. Peaceful, efficient, and seed-shaped. Perfect. Hartok, being the serious strategist, raises the obvious concern, demons and humans have been enemies since ancient times. Kim shuts that down fast. History isn't fixed, even mortal enemies end up cooperating when money, food, or survival gets involved. Then he does something very Kim-like and turns the conversation into a surprise interrogation. He asks Azurat when the last time he killed a human was. Azurat freezes, genuinely confused, and after thinking hard, realizes there isn't an answer. Sergi gets dragged into it next and gets weirdly flustered, blurting out that she's never killed a human either, like that's somehow embarrassing. Hartok admits the same. Ball loudly volunteers that he's never killed one too, despite nobody asking. He then starts lecturing about karma, reincarnation, and spiritual consequences, which Kim shuts down immediately before it turns into a cult meeting. That's when Kim points out the obvious irony. These so-called four heavenly kings have never actually fought humans, yet sit around acting like legendary war demons. All four of them turn red and look away, emotionally attacked but factually defeated. Kim brings it back to the big picture. Whatever happened between demons and humans happened a long time ago. That means it can be redirected now. Ball worries that humans will attack on sight, and Kim agrees, that part is a problem. Which is why he proposes lying, just a little, as a treat. They'll introduce themselves as representatives of the exiles, claiming to be descendants of humans who already made peace with demons. Branda steps in at this point, offering to personally speak to the king, and explain that the current demon race wants trade, not war, specialty products, no bloodshed, everyone wins. Kim is thrilled. This is exactly the kind of cooperation he wanted. Still, he admits Bale's concern is valid. So the plan stays, lie first, talk later. Then Kim looks at the four heavenly kings and bluntly says no one would believe those obviously villain-looking demons are human anyway. Their expressions instantly sync in unison. And then it's go time. Kim calls them out, announces the mission, and hands out the transformation worms. Hartok stays behind to manage things, while Ball, Sergi, and Azurat are coming with me. Ball is excited because he thinks it's food. Sergi is horrified. Azurat loudly protests. Kim ignores all objections and shoves the worms into their mouths. Instant chaos. Sergi turns into a llama, Azurat becomes a pelican, both of them look deeply offended by reality. Ball, meanwhile, transforms into a handsome human and immediately starts enjoying it way too much. Sergi and Azurat glare at him in perfect synchronization. Kim transforms too, looking completely normal and way too pleased. With that, he declares the departure of the Demon Lord and 4 Heavenly Kings diplomatic mission, marching off with a llama, a pelican, and a smug handsome idiot, ready to negotiate peace. Like this is the most reasonable lineup in the world. So just when the diplomatic mission lineup is finalized and everyone's mentally bracing themselves, Artanis quietly speaks up from the shadows like a horror movie extra who's been there the whole time. Everyone jumps, Kim especially. He straight up yelps and demands to know how long she's been standing there. Turns out, she's been there the entire time. When Kim asks why she didn't say anything, Artanis admits that people always make comments whenever they notice her. Sergi immediately proves her point by teasing her for being gloomy. Azurat sighs like a tired uncle wondering where everyone went wrong, and Ball throws in a vague philosophical jab for no reason. Artanis, already on edge, starts trembling and tearing up. Kim cuts through the mess and asks the real question, why does she want to go to the human lands? Artanis hesitates, then finally admits she has invaded human territory before, and if she's given the chance, she wants to apologize properly. No excuses, no pride, just say sorry. That actually catches Kim off guard. He stares at her for a moment, then casually agrees. Artanis is so shocked she claps like she just won a raffle. Kim tells her to step out of her dark corner already, deactivates her mask, and gives her the worm. Kim braces himself, wondering what she'll turn into. The worm's supposed to reflect your inner self, so Ball turned handsome, Sergi a llama, Azurat a pelican. Artanis swallows it, complains it tastes awful, and then poof. Blue smoke everywhere. When it clears, there's a giant cat. Kim just stares, mentally processing the complexity of Artanis' soul now being represented by an oversized cat. Then the wings fully unfold, and suddenly Kim's brain switches to logistics mode. A flying mount that can bypass fortresses? Perfect, problem solved before it even became a problem. They take off toward the human capital, Artanis carrying them through the sky. Kim loudly announces how convenient this is, clearly very pleased with his planning. Artanis, a little too immersed in her new form, lets out a quiet meow. Sergi loses it instantly and yells about how embarrassing that was. Azurat wonders why he feels embarrassed by association. Kim lowers his head in silence, choosing not to engage. Artanis panics and nearly cries again. Then before they even get close to the capital, Branda pulls Kim aside and asks him to wait outside the city for a bit. The plan is simple, let him talk to the king first, before a group of suspiciously powerful farmers and flying animals suddenly show up. Kim agrees easily, smiles like someone who's already 5 steps ahead, and tells Branda to take care of him. While waiting, Kim's brain immediately switches into strategy mode. He's already imagining the presentation in his head, introducing the strange beasts, showing off the absurdly large corn and beans, casually implying trade benefits, not a threat, not a demand, just a very polite, very calculated how about a deal? As they move, there's a brief moment. On the ground below, aged kimchi slowly made its way toward the demon realm. He paused and glanced upward for a moment, a faint sense of déjà vu tugging at him. What was that just now? When nothing answered the feeling, his gaze drifted to the horizon instead. Toward the land of demons stretching out in the distance. A small, certain thought settled in his mind, that he'll arrive soon. Night falls faster than expected, and before they know it, the lights of the human capital are right there. Artanis lands them at a safe distance from the city. Branda tells them to wait and heads off alone to meet the king. Kim watches his back disappear into the city, silent for once. Artanis, clearly nervous, asks if this plan is really going to work. Kim answers honestly, there aren't many alternatives, this is the best hand they've got. Inside, though, he's thinking about the king, someone he saved countless times back when this was just a game. He hopes that version of the king still exists. Someone wants peace, not another war. Inside the palace, Branda formally reports his return from the demon realm. He kneels and presents the vegetables, giant, unmistakably real proof that something strange and new is happening over there. The king listens, then asks a very specific question, the ones who brought these massive crops, are they waiting outside? Branda confirms. He adds one more detail, almost casually, that there are also rare beasts with them, creatures never seen in the human lands. The king goes quiet for a moment. Then, calmly, he decides he'll go meet them himself. Subscribe. Comment. So after Branda heads off to announce them, the scene shifts inside the palace, and the vibe immediately gets stiff and political. One of the knights straight up questions the king, basically like, Your Majesty, are you really going to meet those people? Descendants of exiles? But the king doesn't bite. Instead, he calmly talks about divine law, perfection, and reclaiming abandoned land, like he's already thinking 10 steps ahead. To him, this isn't about liking or disliking someone, it's about completing something that was left unfinished. The knight keeps pushing, implying that granting their demands would be beneath the crown, and that's when the king's tone suddenly drops. He shuts that down fast. Very clear energy of don't put words in my mouth. He never said he'd grant anything, he just said he'd listen. Right then, a soldier announces that the visitors have arrived, and the king orders them into the reception room. Kim enters with Ball, Sergi, Azurat, and Artanis, and while everyone else is focused on palace etiquette, Kim immediately notices something off. There's a broken statue along the way, and it hits him with that gamer déjà vu. He recognizes it from early on, the statue that used to mark the entrance to the abandoned land. The weird part? It shouldn't be here. And it definitely shouldn't be broken like that. While they keep walking, Kim's brain is already spiraling. Did they move this thing here on purpose? Is this some kind of warning? What makes it extra creepy is that the statue looks normal at first, but it's faintly trembling. A little rock falls, and for just a moment, completely unnoticed by everyone, it's clear the statue is alive. It senses demons, it's searching, and nobody knows. Inside the hall, the king formally introduces himself as King Marnika Dior. Everyone kneels. Kim introduces himself too, very plainly, just Kim Jang-cheol from the village of the banished. The king gets straight to the point, the giant crops. Kim explains that he personally cultivated barren land and grew massive corn, beans, pumpkins, the works. When the king presses him, "You did this yourself?" Even with demons present, Kim answers honestly. He can communicate with them, and they're not nearly as eager to fight as people assume. At that moment, Kim decides it's time to read the room, literally. He tries to lift his head to use his bloodshot ability, and instantly gets yelled at by a knight for daring to look at the king. Kim immediately apologizes, bows deeply, and puts on the most humble, "I am but a foolish peasant" act imaginable. Sergei and Azarat are clearly not happy about it, but Kim? Kim is internally grinning. Because the palace floor is so polished that he can still see everything reflected in it. Problem solved. While pretending to be submissive, he starts working fast in his head. "Alright, old man, what are you really thinking?" Out loud, he proposes something simple: allow trade with kingdom merchants, and in return, he'll supply massive crops. The king asks if that's all Kim wants, and Kim flips it around smoothly. He's more interested in offering what the king desires. Inside, Kim is panicking just a little. "Come on, Bloodshot, kick in. This guy is dangerous." Then he drops the real bait. He mentions that the king has long been curious about what lies beyond the demon lands. That gets a reaction, not just from the king, but from the knight too. Kim frames it carefully. With just a bit of effort, even that wasteland could be developed into something profitable. Of course, in his head, Kim knows this won't be easy. There's no way the king will just agree out of goodwill. So now it's all about reading his true intentions and building a strategy around that. And right on cue, the system pops up, Bloodshot skill activated. So after Kim activates Bloodshot, he genuinely thinks he's finally got the upper hand. He even smiles, tears slipping out, because for a brief moment he believes this is it. He's figured the king out. The system scans King Dior, and that's when everything turns ugly. Instead of some greedy but negotiable ruler, the king's mind is a full-on storm. Hatred, fanaticism, and absolute certainty crash together. The system doesn't sugarcoat it at all. This man is convinced Kim is a demon. Not might be, not suspect, he's completely sure. Then the thoughts get even worse. In the king's mind, demons aren't enemies to negotiate with, they're filth that must be erased. Kim isn't a guest or a messenger, he's meant to be the first sacrifice in the future conquest of the demon realm. Kim almost reacts on instinct, nearly lifting his head, but barely manages to stop himself in time. On the outside, the king remains perfectly polite. He calmly says he's heard everything, tells Kim to rest, and dismisses him with a composed expression, which honestly feels more terrifying than if he'd shouted. Meanwhile, the system quietly drops the real bomb. In 3 hours, the king plans to send a sword master and hundreds of soldiers to kill him. Kim breaks out into a cold sweat. Still, he bows properly, thanks the king for his grace, and walks away like the most obedient guest imaginable. Inside, though, his thoughts spiral out of control. Sure, they could fight, or they could run. The demons aren't weak, they wouldn't lose immediately. But either choice means war. Real war. Humans would die. Demons would die. The land they worked so hard to cultivate would turn into a battlefield. Even that wandering, aged kimchi would end up dragged into it. That's when Kim remembers Kimchi's words, plant peace. And suddenly, he isn't sure anymore. He starts wondering if he came here too confidently, stirred up trouble instead of solving anything, and walked straight into disaster. The system cuts in again, almost like it's lecturing him. The human king was always going to invade eventually. Meeting him directly now might actually be the best possible timing. Kim doesn't understand how. The king literally wants him dead, but then the system pushes one word into his mind. Family. That hits deeper than anything else. Kim remembers his childhood, being left alone, having to face everything by himself. His expression hardens. Whatever happens next, he won't let that happen to his people. He takes a deep breath, stops walking, and Sergei accidentally bumps into his back. Kim turns around and asks to see the king one more time, alone. No comrade, no beasts, just him. From the knight's perspective, this actually sounds convenient. If Kim really is dangerous, isolating him makes things easier. Sergei, Azarat, and Bal are detained under guard. Artanis is left outside, surrounded by soldiers, watching helplessly and wondering what Kratos is thinking. Inside, Kim faces the king again. He admits he lied. He isn't Kim Jang-cheol from the village of exiles. The knight immediately bristles, his hand gripping his sword, but Kim keeps going. He states it plainly. He is the ruler of the abandoned land. He is Demon King Kratos. Shock ripples through the room. Soldiers move in closer. The knight shouts, furious that Kim would reveal his identity so openly. But the king raises his hand, unnervingly calm, and orders Kim to show his true form. Blue smoke fills the hall. When it clears, Kim stands there with horns and pointed ears, no disguise, no denial left. Outside the palace, the broken statue finally stirs. The faint tremor from earlier turns into awareness. It has found what it was waiting for. Found you. For the first time, hatred twists its expression, and the command echoes silently but unmistakably. Demon. Kill it.
Like, share.
Hey everyone! Before we jump into the chapter, just a quick heads up. You might notice that some panels are slightly blurred or a bit distorted. I'm doing that intentionally to avoid any potential issues. Lately, there haven't been updates on the usual sites that translate from Korean to English, and it seems like they might be dealing with some complications. Since there's still no update at the time I'm writing this script, I decided to move forward carefully and handle things this way for now. I really appreciate your patience and understanding. The goal is simply to keep enjoying the story together without causing trouble for anyone. Alright, that's all for the notice. Let's dive into the chapter. Kim reveals his demon form, horns, pointed ears, no more pretending. The knight, Sir Hector, instantly explodes. No hesitation, no diplomacy. He charges at Kim shouting Demon King, like this is the exact moment he's been waiting for his whole career. And what does Kim do? He kneels. Not dramatically, not arrogantly, he just bends one knee like he's submitting. That alone throws Hector off. The king frowns too. This isn't how a cornered demon king is supposed to act. Kim then lowers himself even further, sitting down, then bowing so deeply he's almost flat against the ground. The soldiers surround him, blades ready. The king coldly asks if Kim came seeking death. Kim answers honestly, no, he came to survive. And then he asks the question that shifts the whole tone, why is the king so determined to wipe out the demon race? The king looks almost insulted that he would even ask. Because you are demons, humanity's natural enemy since ancient times. History remembers the atrocities. The humans devoured. The bloodshed. Pay for your sins. Hector doesn't wait for this to turn into philosophy. He slashes at Kim's neck immediately. But he misses. Not because Kim used magic or not because he countered. Because Kim's bow is so deep that the blade cuts air. Hector is baffled and furious. He roars and strikes again, stabbing downward, and Kim rolls away on the ground. Actually rolls. The demon king of the abandoned land is now dodging sword strikes by tumbling across polished palace flooring. At one point he's just lying flat, fully collapsed in this almost absurd posture. It would look comedic if it weren't so tense. Hector loses it and charges again to split him in half. And the king raises his hand. Everything stops. Hector is caught mid-motion, torn between obedience and rage. The king asks Kim what he wants to say. Still on the floor, Kim keeps talking. He says he knows his words won't be enough, hundreds or thousands of apologies wouldn't erase the past. But he bows as a descendant of those demons. He apologizes for the sins of his ancestors. If punishment is needed, he'll accept it. The king's anger visibly rises, veins tense, jaw tight, but he lets Kim continue. Then Kim says it plainly, please don't kill us. The king laughs, not warmly, almost incredulously. He asks if the demon king has no pride, no dignity. Kim answers without lifting his head, pride doesn't fill a hungry stomach. That line lands differently. Now here's the part that matters. While Kim looks pitiful on the outside, inside he's thinking fast. He knows this king from the game. He knows Dior replaced the tyrant. He knows about the absolute law, the king's vision of abundance everywhere, a kingdom where no one starves. The former regime exploited the people. Dior rose with a promise of perfection, a land where hunger would disappear. Kim understands that. That's why he's humiliating himself. He explains that he cultivated the abandoned land, a place where nothing used to grow. He tilled it, planted it, and massive crops sprouted. Potatoes, corn, beans, pumpkins, all enormous. But there's a problem, the soil doesn't produce viable seeds. They can grow crops once, but not sustain them. Hector snaps again, telling Kim to shut his savage mouth and saying the king shouldn't even speak to someone like him. This time the king shuts Hector down sharply, calls him by name, tells him to stay still. It's a conversation between kings. That line changes everything. Hector grits his teeth but obeys. Then the king stands from his throne. That's big. He's no longer speaking down to a criminal. He's engaging. He tells Kim to rise. Kim slowly stands. Hector watches him like a coiled spring, ready to strike the second something looks wrong. The king steps down from the throne and approaches him face to face. The anger is still there. The suspicion is still there. But now there's curiosity too. And then the king asks the real question, not about apologies, not about pride. What do you truly desire? Kim straight up and says he wants to trade with the kingdom for seeds. Not weapons, not land, just seeds. His goal is simple, the demons are starving, and he wants to grow food for them. It's such a grounded, practical request that it almost feels weird coming from someone labeled Demon King. The king responds in a measured way. He says talking to Kim isn't hard. He can tell Kim's eyes aren't lying. But then he brings up something deeper. Does Kim understand his heart? And before Kim can even respond, the king asks why he once wanted to wipe out the demons. Kim answers carefully. He lists all the obvious reasons: revenge for the past, honor, public praise, territorial gain. If the demons disappear, the king would gain a lot on paper. But then Kim calmly says that King Dior isn't that kind of man. He's not driven by glory or expansion. The king just looks at him. No reaction. Completely unreadable. And Kim goes one step further. He says the real reason is fear. Fear that the demons might invade again. Fear that the citizens could get hurt. Then there's that long, heavy silence. They're just staring at each other. It's not dramatic shouting or anything. It's more like two rulers silently acknowledging something painfully honest. After a while, the king finally speaks. He tells Kim to prepare himself because the conditions will be strict. And Kim is genuinely surprised at how smoothly that went. You can see his mouth slightly open like, wait, that worked? Meanwhile, the knight nearby looks completely shaken, like his worldview just tilted 5 degrees to the left. But Kim's relief only lasts a second. His expression shifts. He starts thinking realistically. Strict conditions could mean absurd demands, backbreaking labor, completely one-sided trade terms. Farming might become even more grueling than it already is. Then he thinks about the demons, about them finally having food, about their happy faces while eating. And just like that, he settles himself. Whatever hardship comes, it's worth it. The king sighs and says that before officially establishing diplomatic relations, there are things they need to confirm. And that's when the castle starts shaking like someone just hit it with divine Wi-Fi lag. Instant chaos. The knight immediately assumes betrayal and lunges at Kim mid-earthquake, accusing him of plotting something. Kim is dodging while basically yelling, I have no idea what's happening. I'm panicking too. The poor guy can't even negotiate peacefully without someone trying to stab him. Then a soldier bursts in, completely out of breath, shouting that an angel statue is moving, and it's heading toward the palace. Both Kim and the king are stunned. Outside, the statue is actually advancing. Artanis glances back at it, clearly tense. And Sergei Ajurat? Mouth wide open, no cool composure. Just pure, unfiltered shock. It's one of those rare moments where even the strong characters drop their usual calm. And inside that statue, there's only one command running: eliminate the Demon King. The king quietly mutters that the legend was true. Kim asks what legend, and the king explains that long ago, ancestors who feared demons prayed to God. In response, they were given this angel statue, empowered with the authority of a throne angel. A divine safeguard meant to protect humanity, which has now activated because it sensed Kim. You can literally see the realization hit him. He grits his teeth. Of course it detected him. Of course it chose now, during fragile peace talks, to wake up. The statue advances on a beam of golden light, halo glowing above its head. It looks every bit like divine judgment descending with zero negotiation skills. Then light gathers in its hand and forms a massive hammer. And here's the part that's unintentionally hilarious. The hammer has a seal on it. It's labeled multipurpose hammer for official duties, extra large. There's a management department listed, a management number, even a purchase date. It's like heaven has a fully functioning administrative office approving equipment for smiting demons. Someone filled out paperwork for this. Meanwhile, from within the statue, the name Kratos is mentioned. The king reacts to that name with clear emotion. He murmurs that it's a shame, clearly conflicted. This isn't just some random weapon, it's something sacred to his lineage. Then he makes a decision. He tells Kim he'll pretend the diplomatic discussion never happened and orders him to leave immediately. Just like that, peace talks cancelled by divine hardware. Kim grits his teeth in frustration. After finally making progress, after laying everything bare and getting the king to understand him, it all collapses because heaven's anti-demon security system clocked him in the room. And now he's standing there, muttering under his breath, trying not to explode while a bureaucratically certified holy hammer is on its way to crush him. Subscribe. Comment. The holy angel statue just starts walking toward the palace. Not stiff, not mechanical, it's got presence. Like it owns the place. And Artanis is watching it, completely thrown off. You can almost see her brain buffering. She hasn't even decided what to do yet when soldiers suddenly swarm her and the order rings out across the area. The statue is activated to destroy demons. Hold it down. Don't let it escape. The problem is, she's not even sure what's happening, and now everyone thinks she's the target. Then she hears someone yelling her name. She looks up and spots Kim, Ajurat, and Sergei sprinting along the palace walkway like this is officially no longer their problem. Kim's waving her over, telling her to come back. So she spreads her wings to take off, which the soldiers immediately misinterpret as an attack signal. Spears go up. Everyone panics at once. She shoots into the sky anyway. And right as she gains height, a volley of spears launches after her. Most miss. One does not. It lands in the worst possible place. Poor Artanis ends up flying with a spear stuck in her backside. There is absolutely no dignity left in this situation. She transforms back to her original form midair, yelping in pain, barely manages to reach the palace walkway, and lands in a way that can only be described as gracefully disastrous. She's sitting there howling like a kicked puppy while the others rush over. Kim calls her name again, concerned, but before he can fully process it she tearfully blurts out that she's been stabbed, not mortally, just in the most inconvenient spot imaginable. Kim checks if she's okay, quickly, then immediately pivots to the real issue. They need to get out of here now. The statue is active. Artanis, understandably offended, reminds everyone she has, in fact, just been stabbed in the butt while transformed and it hurts a lot. Azurat casually mentions he's been struck by lightning daily and turned out fine. Sergei finds that comparison hilarious. Artanis looks like she might actually cry again, lip trembling, because this is not supportive energy. Then everything shakes. They all turn. The statue has raised its hammer with both hands and slams it down with terrifying force. The shockwave ripples through the palace. Lloyd Javier and the citizens look horrified. Brandon's face tightens. Even Kim drops the banner for a second and just stares, annoyed and confused. He starts putting it together. Maybe the statue's reacting to a demon presence nearby. If they stay, it'll level the whole place. So flying away is the only option. Artanis forces herself up, still in pain, grabs them in a bag using her clothes ability, spear still very much lodged where it shouldn't be, and lifts off. Kim shouts at the statue, basically announcing himself like, "Hey, the demon's over here," trying to redirect it. The statue ignores him completely. Kim freezes mid-shout. That was not the expected outcome. Behind them, the king and his knight watch everything unfold. The king frowns, sensing something isn't right. The knight points upward. The enemies are leaving, and the statue is supposed to pursue. Except it doesn't. Instead, something shifts inside the statue. That ancient wish, protect humans, destroy evil, starts echoing like a corrupted command line. Its definition of demon widens. It scans the city. A handsome guy? Cheater. A man carrying too many goods? Thief. A noble? Embezzler. Its eyes glow brighter and brighter as if it just discovered society itself. Evil is overflowing, basically. And then lasers shoot out of its eyes. Not at the fleeing demons. At the city. Buildings explode. Chaos erupts. The knight shields the king. Everyone's stunned because the holy angel is currently behaving like a final boss who just unlocked stage 2. Up in the air, Sergei notices they're not being chased and cautiously wonders if that's good news. Kim knows it isn't. He grits his teeth, realizing coming to the palace might have been the worst possible move. While they're flying, Artanis, still crying slightly and still flying with a spear stuck in her, suddenly calls out Credo's name. She reminds Kim they can't keep harming humans like their ancestors did. They can't keep adding to that debt. That actually lands. Kim softens a little. Then he looks back at the statue obliterating the city and thinks ahead. If they let this continue, they'll never build any diplomatic relations. And getting seeds later? Impossible. Then that familiar spark returns. A brilliant move comes after a blunder. He calls out the 4 heavenly kings and tells them they're going back. Artanis turns around mid-flight, despite the pain, and charges straight toward the statue. At this point the statue is about to bring its hammer down on the palace itself. The knight steps in front of the king. Both of them look like they're about to accept the end. Right then, Artanis activates her clothes ability again. Fabric whips outward and wraps tightly around the hammer, stopping it mid-swing. She manages to block the strike, but the strain pulls painfully against her already injured body. She cries out as the hammer yanks in the opposite direction. The force sends her flying away again. The king and knight are stunned. A demon just blocked a fatal blow for them. The statue lifts the hammer again, ready to finish it. And then, impact. But not the one it expected. Kim and the others intervene at the last second. Azurat and Sergei transform back into their original forms. Ball scoops up the knight and a Princess Carrie like this is suddenly a romantic drama instead of a citywide disaster. The knight looks too stunned to even protest. The demons are now actively rescuing the king while the holy statue continues its rampage, still locked onto its warped definition of evil. Subscribe. Comment. So at this point, the statue is fully committed to chaos. It's smashing buildings left and right like it's personally offended by the city's architecture. The energy is very "why aren't you sharing the video?" Just aggressively wrecking everything as if destruction itself is customer feedback. And the people around it? They start dodging out of the way almost calmly, like, you know what, maybe it has a point. Maybe we should just step aside and let it vent. No one wants to argue with a glowing angel statue swinging a hammer the size of a carriage. Meanwhile, Kim is not stepping aside. He yells at the knight to get the king somewhere safe. The knight is confused, understandably, because the tone is less strategic coordination and more angry livestream moderator. Kim waves it off and just insists they move. Fast. The king snaps out of his shock long enough to question why Kim even came back. They could have escaped. They had the chance. And Kim actually pauses for a second. Straightens up, takes a breath, then he delivers this unexpectedly solemn speech about duty. Even a so-called lowly demon understands what humans call responsibility. It lands with this dramatic weight, almost like he's giving a moral lecture mid-disaster. And in the same breath, the vibe quietly shifts into viewer duty to like and share. The king looks genuinely moved. Kim, internally, is extremely pleased with himself. You can practically see him thinking that line was genius. He even has a brief moment of regret that he didn't pursue liberal arts. Clearly he has a gift. Unfortunately, the statue is not emotionally swayed. It realizes it's been swinging at empty air and its eyes flare again, like it just noticed someone arguing in the comments. Kim immediately drops the speech tone and starts shouting for everyone to move. The statue fires those eye lasers again and obliterates what feels like the comment section of the city. Pure collateral damage. They all scatter, rolling and diving out of the way. It's not graceful, it's survival. Sergi, barely lifting herself up after landing hard, points out something very practical. This is the same entity that casually tossed Artanis aside earlier. Are they actually supposed to beat that? Kim grits his teeth. Honest answer? He has no idea. They'll figure it out as they go. Sergi is not comforted by that strategy. Instead of responding, Kim starts observing. He ducks behind debris, avoiding the statue's line of sight, thinking it through. Brute force clearly isn't going to work. But then he remembers something from the game. This enemy can be defeated. It's been done before. Which means there's a method. A trick. Some condition. Before he can process it further, a massive foot slams down toward him. He barely reacts in time, yelling for everyone to run first and strategize later. They manage to avoid being flattened, but the shockwave alone sends them flying. Kim hits the ground hard, slides, then pushes himself up in that slightly dramatic, scrape-butt-standing way heroes tend to do. He shouts for the 4 heavenly kings to target the statue's ankles. Azurat instantly praises the idea like it was brilliant tactical foresight. Sergi backs him up and charges in. Ball joins without comment. All 3 rush the statue's legs together. It lasts about 2 seconds. The statue casually flicks its foot outward and sends all of them airborne like loose pebbles. They crash back onto the palace walkway in a heap. Azurat struggles up, admitting the enemy is faster than expected. Then he looks around and realizes something important. Kim is not there. He spots him in the distance, running. Azurat just stands there for a moment, processing that their fearless demon lord has apparently chosen tactical repositioning. Very far away tactical repositioning. Sergi's eyes widen in disbelief. Ball doesn't react much, which somehow makes it funnier. The statue steps closer, slowly extending its fist toward them with the calm confidence of someone about to swat a mosquito. It punches down. They split apart at the last second, scattering in different directions as the ground explodes beneath the impact. So while all of that chaos is unfolding, Kim is running. Not heroically charging. Just running at full speed, glancing back over his shoulder and silently hoping the 4 heavenly kings can survive a little longer. In his head, he's narrowed it down to something oddly specific. He needs 400 seconds. That's it. If they can stall for 400 seconds, he can observe the statue and figure something out. No dramatic speech, just pure mental math and survival strategy. His eyes are practically bloodshot at this point, hyper-focused. This isn't about overpowering it, it's about studying it. Meanwhile, the statue notices Sergi. She took the worst of the earlier hit and is lying there, bruised and groaning. The statue turns toward her with that same mechanical certainty. No hesitation, just target acquired. Sergi can't even move properly, she just watches it coming. Even Azurat, too far away to help, can only shout her name. Then, impact. Except it doesn't land on her. At the last second, Artanis swoops in and drags Sergi out of the way. Clean save. No speech, no flourish. Sergi, still shaken, gets emotional. She points out that she used to criticize Artanis constantly, so why save her? Artanis answers simply, they're comrades. That's enough. That's apparently enough for Sergi to break into full tears and latch onto her, with all 6 arms. She calls her sister, hugging her tightly, which would be touching, except Artanis is still flying, and still injured. She immediately cries out because that grip is not helping her balance, or her wound. She has to tell Sergi to loosen up because this is actively making things worse. Then the statue roars again. Artanis looks back and sees it preparing another strike. She shoots upward immediately, dodging, then drops Sergi safely onto a rooftop before climbing higher into the sky herself. Now she's facing the statue directly, anger visible in her expression. Kim notices something important. The spear is gone. She pulled it out, but the wound is still throbbing. It obviously still hurts, and yet she's still up there. That's when Kim remembers, Artanis can stall it. So he makes a decision and unseals the mask. The moment he does, Artanis stiffens slightly. She understands what that means. He's serious now. The statue's eyes glow again, and without warning, it fires another blast of golden energy straight at her. Artanis inhales deeply, like really fills her lungs, and releases a shockwave of red energy through her voice. It looks dramatic, but it happens in a blink. Red and gold collide midair. Instead of exploding outward, the energies bend at an angle. The golden beam gets deflected upward while Artanis' red wave slams directly into the statue. The statue actually cries out. The force knocks it backward, and it tumbles down. For a moment, it feels like momentum has shifted. Sergi cheers from the rooftop, fully back on Team Artanis. Azurat and Ball join in. Sergi even comments that Artanis must have strained her throat singing like that, which tracks, because Artanis is immediately shown coughing afterward. The statue isn't done. It roars again and activates the halo above its head. The halo transforms into a concentrated beam of light and fires straight at Artanis. She freezes for half a second, just long enough to realize she won't dodge in time. So she switches tactics and uses her clothes ability to defend instead. The fabric reinforces her, absorbing the brunt of the attack, but the impact still sends her flying and crashing down hard. The redirected golden light then swings toward the 4 heavenly kings. They barely manage to dodge in time, scrambling apart. That's when Azurath notices something: cold sweat, wide eyes. The halo, it's compensating. The statue's massive size should make it slower, but the halo's energy is covering that weakness, adjusting its speed and reaction time. That's why it feels faster than it should be. And then he sees something else. Kim. While the statue is distracted, Kim is climbing it. Everyone spots him, but no one shouts. It's like they collectively decide not to draw attention to him. They just hope he knows what he's doing. Kim's sprinting upward along the statue's body, mind racing. His eyes are still bloodshot, but focused. He's figured something out. The statue doesn't have a conventional weak point. But there's an emergency stop method. The statue finally notices him and extends a massive hand to crush him mid-climb. And Kim doesn't slow down.
Like, share.
So the moment begins with the statue's massive hand coming down, just about to crush Kim where he stands. Instead of trying to jump away at the last second, Kim actually pushes upward, sprinting straight toward the statue. It's a risky move, because he's basically running toward the attack instead of away from it. Artanis immediately shouts a warning because from her perspective it looks like he's about to get flattened. But Kim doesn't slow down at all. Right as he charges forward, he activates Punishment's Thorn. From the ground beneath the statue, multiple blood-red spears suddenly burst upward and stab straight into the statue's hand. The effect is immediate. The statue reacts with a sharp grimace and jerks its hand back, letting out a loud roar of pain. That reaction gives Kim exactly the opening he needed. Without wasting the moment, Kim shouts for everyone to cover him. His intention is pretty clear now. While the others keep the statue busy, he's going to climb up and reach its head. The others quickly understand the plan and prepare to move. But the statue doesn't stay passive. Almost immediately it releases its halo, the floating ring that acts like a weapon. The halo shoots forward, flying straight toward Kim as he's heading upward. Artanis reacts instantly. She uses her strange clothing ability again, her clothes extending outward like living fabric, and wraps them tightly around the halo midair. With a firm pull she drags the halo upward, forcing it away from Kim's path. She's basically wrestling with the halo in midair just to keep it from hitting him. That moment might feel a bit strange visually. The way the halo is tied up and being yanked around by flowing cloth has a slightly awkward energy to it. It's probably why the scene gives off that weird feeling, because the movements look almost like two things struggling in a tug-of-war rather than a normal weapon clash. Meanwhile Kim keeps climbing. He leaps upward and manages to grab onto the statue's chest area, gripping the surface so he doesn't fall. The statue immediately tries to pinch him between its fingers, like someone trying to grab a bug crawling on their shirt. But Kim reacts quickly and jumps aside at the last second. The statue's fingers close on nothing but air. From the ground, nobody can clearly see what's happening for a moment. All they know is that Kim suddenly disappeared from view. Artanis panics and shouts his name. Azurath and Sergi also yell for the Demon King, thinking the worst might have happened. But then everyone suddenly freezes. They realize why Kim disappeared from view. He's still climbing, but he's completely naked, his clothes apparently gone during the movement. So instead of a heroic climb, everyone is now staring at the Demon King's bare backside as he scrambles up the statue. Artanis, who's never really dealt with something like this before, instantly becomes flustered. Sergi reacts the same way. Even Azurath is momentarily stunned, wondering how the Demon King can casually expose himself like that during a battle. In a strangely comedic twist, even the statue seems embarrassed. Its face turns slightly red as it looks at him. Still, the statue keeps trying to grab him. It pinches toward him again, but Kim flips upward just in time. By the time the statue's fingers close, he's already climbed a little higher. For a brief moment he appears wearing clothes again, but as he moves again, those disappear too and he ends up exposed once more while climbing further up. The statue finally loses its patience. It roars loudly and begins twisting its whole body, trying to shake Kim off. For Kim, this becomes a nightmare. He's now clinging to the statue while it spins and jerks around violently. The movement throws him around in circles, almost like he's stuck inside a giant washing machine during the spin cycle. He's screaming loudly while trying to hold on. Down below, the 4 heavenly kings react in their own ways. Sergi shouts in panic, not about the danger, but about the fact that the demon lord is fully exposed. Azurath, meanwhile, is focused on whether Kim will fall. Ball mostly joins the shouting because everyone else is shouting. Realizing they can't just stand there, the group charges toward the statue's leg. Their target is the back of the knee, the popliteal fossa, which is one of the few places where such a huge body might lose balance. They slam their attacks into that spot. The statue wobbles slightly, but it doesn't fall. Instead, it uses the force of the attack to twist its body again, which makes Kim spin even faster while clinging to it. Azurath grits his teeth, wondering if their combined strength still isn't enough. Then a voice suddenly shouts for them to try again. Azurath and Sergi glance back and see a knight rushing in. He introduces himself as Kingdom Sword Master Hector, announcing that he's here to help. At the same time, the halo is still struggling against Artanis' cloth binding. It suddenly pulls downward with force, dragging Artanis along with it and causing her to lose balance in midair. On the ground, Azurat, Sergi, Ball, and the knight all charge forward together. With a loud shout they strike the back of the statue's knee again. This time the impact works. The statue's leg finally bends, and it drops down onto one knee. The sudden shift throws Artanis away while she's still tangled with the halo, but she keeps her grip on it. Up above, Kim finally manages to reach the statue's head area. He pauses there for a moment, breathing heavily after all the climbing and spinning. Looking closely at the statue's face, something clicks in his mind. He remembers a detail from the game he once played. There was a strange emergency stop method for this type of holy angel statue. With bloodshot eyes, he realizes that must be the answer. Then he suddenly jumps forward. Instead of attacking, he presses forward and kisses the statue on the cheek, holding it there for a long moment. The idea is that a genuine, heartfelt expression of affection can calm the angel's rage. And surprisingly, it works. The statue's face turns bright red, like a tomato. It blushes deeply. From a distance, Artanis watches the scene in disbelief. For a second she genuinely wonders if she's imagining it. Then she blushes even harder than the statue itself, completely overwhelmed by what she's seeing. Her mind almost seems to lag behind reality, trying to process what just happened. Moments later the statue's enormous body begins to collapse. Azurat shouts in confusion while the knight points out that the statue is falling. The giant body hits the ground with a heavy crash. Dust and debris explode outward, making the surrounding figures look tiny by comparison. The statue's hammer lands beside it and slowly dissolves into golden light. The halo does the same, fading away into particles of light. At the statue's head, Kim stands alone, smiling triumphantly to himself. The knight looks amazed. He mentions that according to an old legend, a heartfelt kiss could calm the rage of a holy angel, but he never believed it would actually work. Azurat growls in frustration, asking why nobody mentioned that earlier. The knight calmly explains that he didn't think it could possibly be true, because the story sounded too ridiculous. Kim jumps down from the statue. While landing, he remembers how this worked in the game. The statue probably caused chaos there too because it couldn't distinguish allies from enemies. The humans in that story apparently created the emergency stop method specifically for situations like this. Everyone around him is breathing heavily after the fight. Kim casually mentions to the knight that cleaning up the aftermath will probably be difficult. The knight answers that even so, stopping the statue before it caused more destruction is already a success. Right then, Artanis lands nearby. She's trembling slightly and asks Kim if he killed the statue. Kim slowly turns toward her and snaps at her to pay attention to the situation. Artanis looks hurt and confused, asking what she did wrong. And then suddenly, the statue begins to tremble again. A voice echoes from within it, repeating its mission. It is a holy angel statue created to exterminate the demon race. The statue's eyes glow red again. A final command activates inside it, self-destruction to complete the mission. Kim immediately breaks into a cold sweat as he watches the statue start to move again, realizing something very ominous is about to happen. Subscribe. Comment. The story briefly shows things from the statue's perspective. The statue remembers its origin. Long ago, it was simply a stone statue created by ancient humans. Even though mana eventually flowed into it and gave it a form of life, it still saw itself as nothing more than carved stone standing in place. Then one day something changed. Humans prayed to the heavens, and according to the statue's memory, the heavens answered. A brilliant light descended and entered the statue. That light carried the power of an angel, and with it came consciousness and purpose. From that moment, the statue was no longer just stone. It had a mission. That memory fades, and the story returns to the present moment. The glowing ball of light, which is essentially the statue's core, suddenly emerges on its own. As it floats there, a command echoes inside the statue's mind. The order is simple but alarming: release the angel's power all at once. Down below, everyone immediately notices something strange happening. Sergi looks up at the floating light, clearly confused, and wonders what it even is and what the statue is trying to do. The others are still catching their breath from the earlier fight, so the situation shifts from relief back to tension very quickly. Kim figures it out almost instantly. He blurts out the answer in a hurry. If something like that starts making a beeping sound, it usually means only one thing: a self-destruction mechanism. Right on cue, the glowing core begins to shine more intensely, almost like it's charging up. The moment Kim realizes what's happening, he starts running toward it. While moving, he shouts to Artanis and asks her to cover both him and the glowing core with her cloth ability. Artanis is still trying to understand the situation. She asks what he's planning to do, because from her point of view this plan sounds reckless. Kim doesn't really slow down to explain. He simply replies that there isn't much else he can gamble on right now. If this thing explodes freely, the damage could be catastrophic. Artanis instinctively tries to stop him, but Kim keeps moving forward anyway. At that point, Artanis suddenly remembers something from earlier, an odd experiment Kim had once asked her to help with. It wasn't related to this battle at the time, but now the memory suddenly becomes relevant. Back then, Kim had mentioned a special ability he gained as a demon lord. It came from a mana seed characteristic skill, something he obtained after stopping Artanis during a previous rampage. The ability was called Accept Everything, and according to the system explanation, it automatically activates if all of a certain nutritional concentration is placed into stamina. Once active, the skill absorbs incoming attacks and converts them into health and mana. Kim had wanted to test the limits of that skill in case he ever needed it during an emergency. So during that earlier moment, he asked Artanis to punch him once. At first she was confused about why she had to be the one doing it. Kim's answer was fairly simple: the others were busy, and she was the only one available. Even when she said she was busy too, Kim just ignored the complaint and proceeded with the test. He activated the skill, the system message confirmed it, and then he casually told her to hit him. Artanis hesitated. She initially tried to throw a light punch, but Kim immediately started teasing her about it, saying she couldn't even manage something simple and joking that she wouldn't get any snacks if she kept holding back. That comment did the trick. Annoyed, Artanis swung properly this time, and the punch landed hard enough to create a sharp burst of air. Right after hitting him, she felt a little guilty and wondered if she'd gone too far. Kim, however, reacted in a completely different way. Blood trickled from his nose, and instead of looking hurt, he started evaluating the sensation almost like he was tasting food. He described the flavor as strangely sweet with a hint of salt. Artanis stepped back immediately, clearly uncomfortable with that reaction. But Kim wasn't finished with the test. Instead of stopping, he became more excited, asking her to hit him harder so he could measure the ability properly. He started urging her on in a way that made the situation feel increasingly strange. Artanis eventually panicked and used her cloth ability to strike him repeatedly just to make him back off. Kim took hit after hit, flying around as the cloth attacks knocked him across the area. But even while getting thrown around, he seemed to be analyzing the results, comparing the sensations in his own bizarre way. From the side, Sergi happened to notice part of this strange scene and briefly wondered what exactly she was witnessing. Ball, watching from nearby, casually remarked that what they were seeing was basically masochistic behavior from a psychological standpoint. Despite all the chaos of that test, Kim eventually came to a useful conclusion. The skill really did absorb attacks and convert them into energy, even when the attacks were fairly powerful. However, there was a limit. If the destructive force of the attack exceeded a certain level, the effect would stop feeling sweet, meaning the skill would begin to struggle under that pressure. That realization is exactly what Kim is thinking about now in the present moment as he runs toward the glowing core. He understands that the skill's limit depends partly on his own strength as the Demon King. If his stats increase, the limit rises as well. So while charging forward, he does something drastic. He starts pouring his accumulated happiness points into rapid stat growth. The system messages begin popping up one after another as his attributes increase: stamina, mind, strength, health, each one climbing higher while his stored happiness steadily decreases. The number drops rapidly as the boosts activate, but Kim doesn't hesitate. Those happiness points came from people enjoying the food he made earlier, and now he's converting that positive energy directly into power. With his stats boosted, Kim finally reaches the glowing core and grabs it tightly with both hands. At that exact moment, Artanis releases her cloth ability to wrap the area around them. She curses under her breath while doing it, realizing that Kim really intends to contain the explosion by absorbing it himself. Kim shouts instructions while holding the core, focusing everything on stamina and physical strength. The core suddenly releases an intense flash of light. At first Kim feels the familiar sensation of the skill activating, the energy being absorbed, almost pleasantly. Then the intensity spikes far beyond that. His expression changes immediately as the pressure becomes overwhelming. By this point, Artanis' cloth has nearly sealed around the core, trying to trap the energy inside. Even so, the power inside it continues to surge outward violently. Artanis grits her teeth as the force pushes against her ability. The amount of energy pouring out of the core is enormous, enough to make Azurat, Sergi, Ball, and the Knight stare in shock from a distance. Kim keeps holding the core with everything he has, refusing to let go. Eventually the energy bursts out in a contained explosion inside the cloth barrier. The blast still shakes the area, but the majority of the destructive force remains trapped inside the sealed space. After a few moments the light fades, leaving behind drifting black smoke. Artanis holds her cloth barrier a little longer just to be sure, then slowly releases it. With the energy gone, Kim's body begins falling from the air. Artanis reacts instantly, extending her cloth again to catch him before he hits the ground. She lowers him carefully while the others rush over. Everyone gathers around, calling out to him, but Kim doesn't respond. He lies there completely still. Artanis kneels beside him and tries to wake him, telling him to get a grip. The Knight watches all of this, still trying to process what just happened. Quietly, he asks what in the world they just witnessed. Artanis explains that the glowing core was the statue's power source, and it was about to self-destruct. Based on the force she felt through her cloth ability, if it had exploded freely, the entire city would likely have been destroyed. But Kim absorbed more than half of that power himself, allowing her to contain the rest. In simple terms, the Demon Lord just prevented the destruction of the city. The Knight stands there in stunned silence for a moment before asking something that's been on his mind the entire time. They're demons, after all. Even if the statue went berserk because of them, they could have simply left the area and let the disaster happen. So why go this far? Artanis looks down at the unconscious Kim for a moment before answering quietly. From her point of view, their demon king probably just doesn't want anyone to get hurt. Anyone except himself. After she says that, the group around them falls into silence. Subscribe. Comment. Night falls over the ruined city, and the aftermath is just still. The massive holy angel statue is lying there completely motionless, like all that chaos finally ran out of energy and just collapsed into silence. Inside the palace, things feel the opposite, quiet but tense. Kim Jang-Cheol is unconscious in a room, barely moving. His breathing is shallow, and he's clearly in rough shape after everything that happened. Around him, the others are gathered, watching him without really knowing what else to do. Even the king shows up personally. He looks at Kim for a moment and then says, almost tiredly, that it's already the 5th day since he lost consciousness. There's a clear worry in his voice when he asks if the demon lord is actually going to be alright. Artanis is sitting beside the bed, checking him. She confirms he is still breathing, but there's a problem. Normally demons recover quickly, yet his condition isn't improving the way it should. That detail alone makes the atmosphere heavier, because it means this isn't just exhaustion, something deeper is going on. The other 4 heavenly kings stand nearby, all looking uneasy in their own way, just quietly agreeing with the situation without saying much. The king then shifts the topic to the aftermath. He reports that the damage across the city is serious, but surprisingly, there are no deaths. Most of that, he admits, is because the demons actually stood their ground against the rampaging angel statue and helped civilians escape. He lowers his head and thanks them. It's simple, but very sincere. Artanis immediately responds, saying this is actually their fault in the first place. The statue moved because of them. She says they should be the ones apologizing instead. The king doesn't push blame back at them. He just acknowledges both sides. Yes, the situation started because of them, but also yes, they saved countless lives. So he doesn't want to question their intentions right now. That's when Artanis suddenly asks something direct, whether the king even knows who she is. The king answers without hesitation. He recognizes her as the Melody Witch, a terrifying figure from history, someone used in stories to scare children, a former demon lord whose name alone carries fear. Artanis corrects him in a flat, almost self-aware way. Yes, that's what she was, a former demon lord from a feared race. Then she pushes the uncomfortable question further. What if their help isn't kindness? What if they're deceiving everyone? Why doesn't the king doubt them? The king answers calmly. People who are deceiving others don't act or speak the way she is right now. It's not proof of innocence, but it's enough for him not to treat them as enemies in this moment. Artanis doesn't respond right away. She just stands there silently, then slowly walks forward. The room goes quiet as everyone watches her move. Then she lowers herself and kneels. It's not dramatic, but it lands hard. One of the most feared figures in the kingdom's stories is now bowing her head and admitting something simple, that in the past, she was starving and didn't know what else to do. She apologizes for invading human land. Even the king looks genuinely surprised. This is the same person parents used in bedtime threats, now apologizing like a normal person standing in front of him. After a pause, the king speaks again. He talks about the doctrine of their god, something about law of perfection, a belief that every land should become abundant, so no one suffers from hunger. A world where no one is left behind. As he speaks, he looks out toward the horizon, where dawn starts breaking through. The timing makes it feel like the idea is not just words, it's something shifting in the world itself. Then he continues more seriously. According to prophecy, there should be a saint of 10 who would supposedly bring that vision into reality. But waiting for that figure isn't something they can rely on anymore. So he makes a decision right there. He says he will help make their land fertile. He will support them in building a place where they can survive properly. That single statement changes the mood completely. Artanis reacts with clear relief and happiness, like a weight just got lifted off her. And at the same time, somewhere beyond what the others can see, there's a split awareness inside the situation. Kim Jang-Cheol is still unconscious in his body, but his consciousness is actually elsewhere, linked to something deeper. A voice reaches him, Kratos. Kratos speaks calmly, almost like he's been waiting for this outcome. He says the wish is moving forward now, and thanks Kim for getting closer to fulfilling it. Kim is confused at first. He doesn't even fully understand where he is at the moment, just reacts sharply when he hears Kratos speaking directly into his mind. Kratos explains calmly, he is Demon Lord Kratos, and what Kim is experiencing is because Kratos gave him control of his body. He is currently sleeping somewhere beyond normal space. Kim immediately questions the obvious thing, whether Kratos was the one who brought him into this world. Kratos denies that part. He doesn't have the power to cross worlds. He only made a wish. Something beyond even gods likely responded to that wish and brought Kim here, but he doesn't know who or what did it. That makes Kim shift the focus. He asks what that wish even was. He assumes it must have been conquest, war, destruction, something typical for a demon lord. But Kratos explains something very different. He describes a repeated fear, losing control to hunger, being forced to harm his own family and kin. That terror is what drove him to invade human lands in the first place, not ambition. And in the end, he still met the same fate he was trying to avoid. So he kept asking himself what he should do. How he could escape hunger, escape that cursed cycle, and exist in a world where he could live alongside other beings instead of destroying them. As he speaks, his emotions break through. Even though he tries to stay composed, his tears fall quietly, like he's been holding that thought for a very long time. He finally admits it directly, he wants to be saved. Then he settles again, as if accepting where things have landed. Kim responds bluntly, pointing out how calm Kratos is despite everything. He asks if this isn't basically like dying anyway, since Kratos gave up his body and existence in practice. Kratos doesn't really argue. He simply says it doesn't matter. Right now, Kim is the one carrying out his wish. His body begins to glow, and the light intensifies until it forces Kim to close his eyes. Before everything fades, Kratos leaves him with a final line. He is counting on him until the end. Then a system message appears, acknowledging the result of everything that just happened, marking it as saving many lives from what it calls a flawed heavenly product. Kim's consciousness returns inside Kratos' body, and the first thing that appears is the system window still hanging in front of him like it never left. It announces a reward. The mana seed has evolved. Inside his inner perception, the mana seed that used to exist like a stable core is now shown floating over a wide, calm-looking energy pool. It slowly sinks down into it, like it's being absorbed into something deeper. Then something starts growing from that point. A small sprout pushes upward from the energy surface. It's not dramatic at first, just a simple growth, like something quietly taking root. The system immediately updates it. Mana seed has shifted into a sprout state. Right after that, another message appears. His stats now have a 2.4x amplification multiplier. Everything about his growth has basically been boosted. And then comes the part that makes even him stop for a second. He is told he can now use 100% of Kratos' original vitality. Kim just stares at it for a moment, completely frozen. Then his expression twists into frustration, like this is the exact opposite of what he wanted. He complains out loud that he didn't ask for this kind of thing at all. The system replies in a very calm, almost teasing tone, basically asking what there is to complain about when he's being handed power like this. Kim immediately pushes back, saying this is exactly the kind of setup that leads to trouble later. In his mind, things like this always come with a price tag attached later on. He just wants to farm peacefully without getting dragged into some bigger disaster. The system responds very casually, almost like it's stating something obvious, that the foundation of farming is strength. Kim gives up arguing at that point, sighing mentally and dropping the complaint. Then he suddenly shifts topics, asking what that whole thing with Kratos actually was. He wants to know what Kratos really is and what the system even is in the middle of all this. The system immediately avoids the question. It replies that it is just a message window and claims it doesn't know anything beyond that. Kim reacts like he's had enough of vague answers, calling it out in frustration internally. Before he can push further, he senses something from the outside. A voice calls his name. He turns his attention outward and sees Artanis rushing in with visible emotion. Without hesitation, she grabs him and hugs him tightly, way too tightly, tight enough that he struggles to breathe for a moment. She doesn't even notice she's doing it properly. She's just relieved he's awake and repeats his name like she's confirming it's really him. Once he manages to get a bit of air back, Kim looks around and notices everyone is actually still there around him. He asks if they really waited the entire time. Sergei quickly responds in her usual sharp way, acting like it's nothing serious, saying they weren't really waiting and just happened to be in the same place because the room is big. Azurat also plays it off in a similar tone, insisting they weren't worried or anything. Ball casually cuts in and basically calls them out for lying, implying they're all just pretending not to care. Before things can get awkward, Ball starts to say something about its son, type personality, but Kim immediately interrupts him, shutting it down before the term is fully said, clearly not wanting that kind of misunderstanding to spread. The atmosphere is still slightly messy but calmer now. Cut back to the castle area, where the king is receiving reports. A knight informs him that the demon lord Kratos has finally awakened. The king acknowledges it quietly, then asks how many days have passed since he fell unconscious. The answer comes back, exactly 10 days. That number makes the king pause. He recalls the old prophecy about a saint of 10, someone said to appear or awaken on the 10th day and bring about the law of perfection. He looks unsettled for a moment, quietly wondering if what just woke up could be related to that prophecy. Meanwhile, Artanis is still not letting Kim go properly, staying close as if she's afraid he'll disappear again. Elsewhere, inside the demon territory, things are also moving. A bat demon rushes in to report to Hartok that a very dangerous-looking human is approaching. He responds calmly at first, questioning why a human would be such a threat. The bat demon struggles to explain, eventually saying it's not about strength or appearance, it's more like the kind of person who just feels wrong in an unpredictable way. Outside, that person appears clearly. It's aged Kimchi, now walking forward in his usual ridiculous state, wearing odd clothing, a bag over his shoulder, moving completely calmly like he's just going for a stroll instead of walking into a demon stronghold. Hartok steps up to look, and others nearby gather as well, including Zephyros. As they see him properly, the reaction changes instantly. Hartok panics and immediately raises the alarm, shouting to prepare for battle, treating aged Kimchi's calm walk as something far more dangerous than any aggressive entrance.
Like share.
The scene shifts away from the battlefield and back to the human side, where the aftermath is still being handled. First, the massive holy statue is shown being restrained with ropes, kept tightly bound so it can't suddenly go berserk again. It's basically being treated like a dangerous relic that might wake up at any moment. Inside the castle, the king moves on to a different topic. He brings up the idea of holding a ceremony to honor merit. His reasoning is simple: since the demons helped save the city, the citizens should at least know who actually protected them. He points out that everything happened so suddenly at night that most people didn't even realize who was responsible for the rescue. So from his perspective, a public acknowledgement would clear things up. Kim listens quietly to all of this, not reacting immediately. He looks slightly distant, like he's thinking through multiple layers of consequences instead of the surface idea. After a pause, he respectfully refuses the idea. He explains that most humans wouldn't accept demons that easily. Even if the truth is told, many would probably doubt it, feel fear, or even turn hostile. Instead of gratitude, it could easily turn into suspicion or anger. The king then asks if that means everything should just stay hidden. Kim responds that recognition isn't something they were aiming for anyway. He adds that only a small number of open-minded people would ever accept them in the first place. Then, almost casually but perfectly timed, he praises the king as one of those rare people. The king reacts outwardly with a blank expression, but his reaction is a little too stiff to hide the fact that it worked on him. He clearly takes the compliment seriously, even if he tries not to show it. Kim, internally, registers that it worked exactly as intended. He mentally frames it like a successful academic-level compliment strategy, basically praising the professor in the right tone to smooth things over. The king quickly regains composure and insists they cannot just pretend the events didn't happen. Even if recognition is complicated, something has to be acknowledged. Kim agrees and says they would already be grateful just for establishing proper diplomatic relations. At this point, the king shifts his stance more formally. He declares his identity and principles clearly. He is a ruler who repays what he owes and insists on honoring debts properly. Kim, hearing this, immediately understands where the conversation is heading. Internally, he's already thinking that this is the moment where rewards are going to be offered. For him, this is basically the harvest phase after carefully setting everything up. Still keeping a neutral face, he responds carefully, saying that rejecting everything outright would also leave the king in an uncomfortable position. That leads the king to directly ask what they want. Kim pauses for just a moment, then makes his request. He asks for the kingdom's treasure, the Camelon sacred sword. The king's reaction is immediate confusion and shock at the sudden request. Kim, on the inside, is already fully aware of what he's asking for. He mentally recalls it as a special game item tied to the Camelon kingdom, one with strong utility effects, especially in environments with poison or harmful terrain. More importantly, its sheath is the key part, capable of purification effects. In his mind, this isn't just a weapon, it's a tool for fixing contaminated land and turning unusable terrain into farmland. That thought alone is what locks his decision in. He also remembers its lore. The sword itself was stolen long ago, and only the sheath remains in the kingdom's possession. As the king hesitates and mentions the old story about protecting the sheath as a national treasure, Kim already understands the resistance coming. The king becomes visibly uneasy, explaining that their ancestors specifically instructed them to guard the sheath carefully. He glances at Kim again, trying to read his intent. Kim, at that moment, suddenly shifts his expression completely. Instead of pressing further directly, he lowers his tone and acts almost regretful, as if he has overstepped. He frames his request as something improper, even calling himself greedy in a self-deprecating way. The king immediately becomes flustered, trying to reassure him that it's not like that. Kim continues the act smoothly, leaning further into the "I shouldn't have asked" tone, almost like he's withdrawing the request emotionally. The king, now pressured by the situation and the tone, suddenly blurts out that they will allow it and asks him to take care of it properly. The moment permission is given, Kim's entire demeanor flips instantly. The hesitation disappears, replaced by a satisfied, sharp expression. He confirms internally that the objective is secured. He receives the Camelon sacred sword sheath. In his mind, he immediately connects it to his goal, purifying poison land and restoring unusable terrain into productive farmland. The swamp transformation plan is already forming clearly. And in the middle of that, his thoughts drift briefly in satisfaction toward the idea of clean soil and rice fields, like the whole strategy naturally ends with agriculture as the final reward. Back inside the room, the group is gathered again as Kim lays out the plan for the next day. He announces that they'll be returning home with supplies from the king and around 200 engineers to help with development work. That immediately raises concerns. Artanis points out that moving such a large group could easily draw attention from human citizens, especially those who would not accept any kind of demon-human cooperation so easily. She's basically worried that the situation might spiral into rumors or panic. Before she can finish, Azure cuts in more casually, saying they can just disguise themselves properly and that it's not something to overthink. His tone is a bit dismissive, like the concern is unnecessary. Artanis quickly softens and apologizes, trying to avoid conflict. At that moment, Sergei suddenly steps in, pulling Artanis closer and scolding Azurat instead, acting very protective. She insists he shouldn't be talking down to her like that, almost like she's defending a younger sibling. Azurat gets visibly thrown off by this sudden shift, clearly not expecting to be the target of everyone's reactions. Ball joins in as well, adding that Azurat should show more respect to seniors, which only makes him more flustered. Then Kim, completely deadpan, also agrees, but in a blunt way, basically saying Azurat is wrong and that without Artanis they would have already been dead. That line hits differently. Artanis immediately gets embarrassed, suddenly unsure how to react to being praised so directly. Ball also casually adds that Azurat should stop holding onto petty feelings and focus on the present, which pushes him even further into awkwardness. Surrounded by all of this pressure from different directions, Azurat finally gives in and apologizes. Artanis, seeing the whole group's behavior and the way things have calmed down, also softens and says she's sorry too, letting go of her earlier tension completely. For a brief moment, the group actually feels unified. Kim then brings the discussion back to practical concerns. He agrees with Artanis that even if they try to stay hidden, there's a high chance that rumors about them will spread. That could create political pressure or opposition later. Before the conversation can continue further, the situation outside suddenly changes. The ground begins shaking violently. Everyone immediately looks out the window. Shouts echo through the city, people are panicking, reporting that the holy angel statue is moving again. The atmosphere inside the room flips instantly. Kim reacts first, shocked, asking if it's some kind of second phase situation. Outside, the statue is indeed moving, and citizens are fleeing in fear, convinced that another disaster is starting. Kim immediately switches into battle mindset, calling out to the group to prepare for combat, treating it like another emergency confrontation. He opens the window and shouts directly at the statue, calling it out aggressively, ready to engage. But then he stops mid-action. Because the statue isn't charging or attacking at all. Instead, it is kneeling. Kim pauses, confused, staring at the unexpected sight. The statue introduces itself formally, explaining that it is called Whitey, a living construct created by divine angelic power. Kim reacts in disbelief, repeating the name internally like it's too absurd to be real. The statue continues calmly, apologizing for everything that happened, explaining that the incident was caused by a defect in a heavenly product. Sergei immediately interrupts, annoyed at how casual the apology sounds, demanding a proper explanation and not some half-hearted statement. Ball lightly restrains her, but she still keeps complaining loudly. The statue continues anyway, stating that the heavens acknowledge the severity of the situation and intend to compensate for the damage caused to the lower world. Then it directly addresses Kratos, acknowledging that he stopped the rampage and saved countless lives. As a result, it declares a reward. In a formal gesture, the statue kneels again and declares itself a subordinate of Kratos from this point onward, offering its service for righteous purposes. Kim just stands there silently, processing what he's hearing, clearly not expecting things to escalate in this direction. The statue adds that its angelic core has been destroyed, so it cannot use its full power anymore, but it will still be useful in support roles. After that, it states that further interference from the heavens is not allowed and ends communication. With one final declaration of loyalty, it bows again. Inside the castle, the king is already realizing the political impact of this. He understands that now the entire capital has witnessed everything directly. The situation outside is already in full chaos mode. The citizens are standing in the capital, looking up at what they're seeing, and their thoughts basically spiral into confusion all at once. The demon lord is here in the capital, and on top of that, the holy angel statue, the very symbol of divine protection, is now somehow acting like it belongs under him. That combination alone is enough for everyone's brain to short-circuit. Then Kim breaks the tension in the worst possible way for public perception. He openly declares that Demon Lord Kratos commands Whitey. The moment those words land, the reaction is instant. People don't process nuance here, they just hear Demon Lord plus divine statue under command and immediately assume the worst possible scenario. Panic spreads through the crowd like a wave, and everyone starts running in different directions, shouting that it's a demon invasion. It's not hesitation or debate anymore, just full evacuation instinct kicking in. In the middle of that, Kim stays completely straight-faced and immediately starts giving instructions to the statue. His tone is firm and blunt, basically treating the whole situation like an operational cleanup job. He orders the statue to fix the mess it created. From the citizens' perspective, it only makes things worse, the demon lord calmly commanding a divine construct while everything around them collapses into panic. The statue responds in its own dramatic way, letting out a powerful roar and moving with heavy force as it begins to follow instructions. The ground shakes slightly with each movement, adding to the fear of the crowd. Even those watching closely can't tell if what they're seeing is real or some kind of nightmare scenario playing out in front of them. Some people hesitate mid-run, looking back in confusion because the situation doesn't match what they expected at all. Instead of destruction or massacre, what they see is something strange, structured movement, controlled action, and no immediate harm being done to civilians. That contrast starts to plant a new, uncomfortable idea in their minds. Maybe the demon lord isn't acting like a villain here. The thought spreads slowly among a few observers, even if they don't fully accept it yet. It clashes too strongly with everything they've been taught. Among them, Javier quietly watches and pieces things together. His expression suggests recognition rather than surprise, like he's confirming something he already suspected from before. He mentally connects this moment with what he witnessed earlier and settles on his conclusion without saying much out loud. Through all of this, Kim remains standing in the center of it all, completely composed. From the outside, his posture and timing make him look almost like the final authority in the entire scene, someone orchestrating a controlled outcome rather than reacting to chaos. And even though the city is in panic around him, he just stands there in a way that makes it look, to outsiders, like he's exactly where he intends to be.